The weather outside may be getting cooler, but that just means that things in the kitchen are starting to heat up. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make one of my very favorite comfort foods, chili. 3 delicious ways. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make my classic beef and bean chili, a delicious vegetarian chili, and finally, a white chicken chili that doesn't use any tomatoes at all. What I absolutely love about these recipes is that they're warm and hearty and they freeze really, really well. So you can make a huge batch and freeze the leftovers, and you have a great go-to dinner when you just don't feel like cooking, which happens to me more often than you could probably imagine. Another reason I love chili is that it's packed with nutrients and protein. And of course, beans, good for your heart. The more you eat, the more you... It's also great for your digestion. So let's get started with my classic chili recipe. Now I'm using a Dutch oven for this recipe, but you could totally use just a large saucepan, or you could do this all in a slow cooker. That would work just as well. So I've got my Dutch oven heating up on medium-high heat, and to that I'm just gonna add some oil. Now that my oil is heated up, I'm going to toss in what I consider to be the holy trinity of flavor: onions, celery, and peppers. We're gonna let these guys get going until the onions start to go translucent. About 5 minutes and they should be ready. Now the reason we don't add our garlic at the very beginning is because it burns really quickly. So we don't want it to burn while the rest of our vegetables are softening. So we're gonna wait until our vegetables are soft, then we're gonna add our garlic. Now I'm adding 3 cloves because we are making a huge pot of chili. But after about a minute, you'll be able to smell that garlic cooking away. It smells so delicious. And that means it's time to add our beef. Now I'm using extra lean ground beef in this recipe. You can use any kind of beef you want, or you could replace it with chicken or turkey. We wanna crumble our beef up really, really well into little bits, and then we're gonna let it brown. Once it's browned, we are going to start adding a whole lot of flavor to this chili. What I have here is some chili powder, some garlic powder, some ground cumin, some ground coriander, and some oregano. These 5 spices are basically the sort of magical combination that makes up any great chili recipe. So we're gonna put our spices in and let them cook off. The idea is to toast your spices just slightly so they become even more flavorful with the heat. Then we are going to add our beans. Now you could use just kidney beans, that's very traditional in this sort of recipe, but I like to use mixed beans because I think it actually looks a lot better. To that, I'm going to add some diced tomatoes and some crushed tomatoes and some broth. Now I'm using chicken broth because that's what I had on hand, but you could easily use beef or vegetable broth too. This is just gonna add another level of flavor and a little more liquid for all of this to cook in. Finally, and most importantly, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now I love this stuff because it amps up the beefy flavor even more. We're gonna give that a really good stir and let it boil. Once this is all mixed together, we're gonna add some salt and pepper, we're gonna cover it with a lid, and we're gonna turn the heat down to low. We're gonna let it simmer for at least half an hour, but up to 2 hours. The longer it simmers, the more delicious it's gonna be. And when you're done, you have this gorgeous, meaty chili that is basically the perfect comfort food for a cool autumn day. Now, we're just gonna top this with a little bit of sour cream, some shredded cheddar, and some pickled jalapenos to make it extra special. And look at that, good enough to eat. Absolutely amazing. Grab your spoons. Actually, don't grab your spoons because we're on to our next chili. Next up is our amazing vegetarian chili with quinoa and chipotle peppers. Now this chili is so flavorful, you will not even miss the meat, and I promise it is the perfect dish for meatless Mondays. So it starts off very much in the same way. We have a large saucepan and some oil heating up. To that, we are going to add our vegetables. And because it's vegetarian chili, we're gonna go for it. We're adding some onions, some celery, some bell pepper, we've got some tasty carrots, and we're just gonna let these saute until the onions turn translucent and the vegetables have softened up a little bit. Once our veggies have softened up, we're going to add our garlic and cook it for about a minute. Once you start to smell that garlic, it's time to intensify the flavor even further. And we're going to do that with chipotle peppers. Now you buy these in a can, they're called chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. I love these because not only are they spicy, but they're also really smoky, so they add a whole different flavor to this chili. I'm using 1 or 2, you could totally dial that up if you really want some spicy chili. I just minced it up, I'm gonna add it, and then I'm going to add my spices. We're using the very same spices in all 3 of these recipes. So once again, it's chili powder, garlic powder, cumin, ground coriander, and oregano. In they all go, let them toast up the very same way we did with our beef chili. Once that's had a chance to toast up about 30 seconds, we're going to start adding in our protein. So I'm adding in some cooked quinoa, 2 cans of black beans that I've just rinsed and drained. I'm also gonna add a can of corn. What I love about it is that it adds just a little bit of sweetness, and that sweet smokiness mixing together is so, so tasty. To that, we are going to add our diced tomatoes and our strained tomatoes, some vegetable stock, and we're gonna give this a really good stir. We're gonna season it with salt and pepper and then cover it with a lid, turn the heat down to low, and just let it simmer. Man, you could let this bad boy simmer all day. It only gets better with time. Once it's done, it looks like this. Absolutely gorgeous and tastes to die for. If you wanted to amp it up even further, you could add a little bit of shredded cheddar or some sour cream, but if you wanted to leave it completely vegan, just eat it plain. It's super, super delicious either way. Finally, I'm excited to share with you my recipe for white chicken chili. Now, if you've never had white chili, the idea is it's all the deliciousness of chili, but without the tomatoes, so it's a bit less acidic. So I've got some oil heating up in a large saucepan, and to that I'm gonna add the same classic flavors we've been working with all along. Some onion, some celery, and some pepper. Once these have softened, I'm going to add a jalapeno pepper. Now, you could also use poblanos here, or if you wanted a little less heat, you could go with mild chilies. Those would work just as well. We're gonna let those cook up a little bit and then add some garlic. Once the jalapeno and the garlic are cooking up, we're going to toast our spices. We're using the exact same spice blend that we used in the last 2 recipes. Then to that, we are going to add some cooked chicken. Now, I love this recipe because it's the perfect place to use leftover chicken. So I basically just diced up 2 chicken breasts. I'm going to toss that in and add some white beans as well. I'm using cannellini beans. Any white beans will totally do. I'm also going to add a can of corn for a little bit of sweetness. I love that sweet and spicy combination, as you know. And then to this, we are going to add chicken broth as opposed to tomatoes. This is going to make sort of a soupy texture at first. All right, so now that this baby is bubbling away, I'm gonna put the lid on, we're gonna turn the heat down to low and let this simmer for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, we're gonna come back and thicken up our white chicken chili. And you could do this with sour cream or with yogurt, both would work just fine. But I like to do it with a little bit of cream cheese. Now, it's really important you don't try to add the cream cheese right into the pot because the cheese will curdle and it will just make a hot mess of your entire chili. You need to temper it first. So we're starting with our cream cheese at room temperature. Then all we have to do is ladle a couple cups of broth into our cream cheese and whisk it really, really well. We basically want that broth to break down the cream cheese really nicely until we have a nice smooth texture. Now that this has been tempered, we can safely add it back into our pot without worrying about it all separating and getting really, really yucky. As you can see, we have this glorious creamy consistency that is going to be super delicious when it's done. I like to let this simmer on low for another 10 to 15 minutes just to bring it all together, and then I serve it with a little bit of shredded cheddar. What could be more delicious than this? I hope these 3 recipes will inspire you to get into the kitchen and give them a try. And if you do, be sure to tweet or Instagram me a photo. I absolutely love seeing what you're coming up with in your own kitchens. And if you have any comfort foods you'd like to see me make on the show, be sure to leave your suggestions in the comment section below because I love hearing from you. And finally, if you haven't already, subscribe to The Domestic Geek because there's lots more deliciousness where this came from.